Wonderful. Okay, so we discussed this last lecture. So qualitative versus quantitative. We'll just do a little bit of a review just to make sure we're all on the same page. Positivist is the idea that the world is external and objective. All your results are objective. Of course, if you look at it from a phenomena perspective, the world is constructed by the individual. It is very subjective, and each person's interpretation of the world is quite different, really. I'm just going to let Aretha in the classroom. There we go. The impression that science is value free, which means science is truly unbiased, you should believe science because science is objective, is a positivist perspective. Science is driven by human interests, 100% the view of a phenomenological approach. And when you think about it, there are arguments going on right now, really big debates where one group of researchers is saying science is showing something, and there's another group completely disagreeing, saying that, well, the science is not true. And the biggest example is the debate on climate change that's going on in the United States. We don't have much of a debate uh, in Canada, at least not as strong. But in America, several or a large section of the population, including their current president, Trump, strongly believes that climate change due to humans is a matter of debate, and it's driven by human interests and by researchers who are looking at that phenomena and using certain types of lenses. The focus with a positivist perspective is always on facts, and the interesting thing is facts depends upon the context. Michaela, let's see if you can get that person in. There we go. Okay. Focus is on subjective meanings of how the fact is interpreted, and that's the phenomenological idea. Formulating or writing down hypothesis and creating hypothesis is very much something that's done in a positivist perspective. In a phenomenological perspective, you create your theories, you create your model from the data you get. Okay? A cause and effect or relationship between two different variables. For example, the amount of physical activity and the incidence of, say, heart disease. So you look at the cause and effect relationship, and that's something you do in a positivist situation. And if you try to understand what's happening, that's more of a phenomenological mindset. Now, keep in mind, when you're looking for causality between variables, most of the times it is quantitative. So when I've marked this as quantitative, that's just most of the time. You can have causality between variables based on qualitative results as well. And that's why when I put this box in front of you, it's presented as a positivist versus phenomenological instead of saying quantitative versus qualitative, even though most of the time quantitative tends to be positive and most of the time qualitative tends to be phenomenological. Okay, so for practical purposes, you can make the assumption that this would be the case. There is no real need when you're looking at phenomena to try to relate one variable or one concept to another. It's more important to understand what is going on. And sometimes there may be no relationship that you understand. It's just describing what is happening, right? Okay. Another focus on a positivist setup or mindset is to operationalize concepts. And if you remember what operationalizing means is if you start off with a large concept, let's call it educational attainment. As you can see, this is unpacked, right? So it's not operationalized. You can't use it. When you start to break it down, and you say, okay, number of post-secondary education, number of years of post-secondary education. And then you may want to break it down further. Number of post-secondary professional courses, and so on. And it would be up to the researcher. Professional courses or whatever it is. Okay. So these are measurables. The moment you start getting into measurables, then you consider the concept being operationalized. Now, this is not something that's done in phenomena. You use multiple methods to look at different views. You might end up using interviews, focus groups. You might use observation, and so on. There's no requirement to generalize in the case of having a phenomenological approach, because you are interested in individual small samples that you look at over a period of time and see if you can uncover the same or extensions of the same phenomena. Obviously, with a positivist approach, what you're looking for is big answers, and we use the example of the flu vaccine and its efficacy, and that's pretty much what you would do in a positivist approach. And more of a qualitative, quantitative versus qualitative, it breaks it down a little bit more. Now, I understand that this, I don't know if I've uploaded the slideshow yet. Probably not, because this set of slides is not yet done, but they will get uploaded onto D2L, and you'll have access to these tables as well moving forward. It takes some time to review the differences. These questions on these differences are also in your question bank. So it is an important question for you to be able to articulate the differences between the two. You can use bullet points, but it's even better if you can speak to each of these points. The next concept that you get introduced to in chapter 4 is primary versus secondary research. Now, I believe it was Samantha a few lectures ago, she had pointed out that at her long-term care facility, they collected a lot of different data. And we had that discussion in class where I told you that Stats Canada collects a lot of information. So what happens a lot of times is different organizations, they end up collecting information, a lot of it sometimes, and the goal may be to conduct research or have it available to conduct a certain kind of research. So when you collect information that you plan to act upon, that you plan to use, that is typically called, and you do research with the data you collect, it's called primary research. For example, Stats Canada collects a lot of demographic information to figure out which cities in Ontario have the highest median income. So it collects people's individual financial information. It contacts the CRA and gets information from them on tax filings, not necessarily with personal identifiers. It picks up a lot of information. And it tries to relocate that information to cities, and perhaps even distributes as rural versus urban areas. Now, in collecting all that information, there's also a lot of biographical information: where they live, are they married, what their level of education is, and so on and so forth. Not all of this information is relevant to the report that Stats Canada puts out, talking about, let's say, educational attainment and income, or geographic location and income. However, that data has already been mined, so we call that mining, data mining. And that information can now be used by, say, hypothetically, if one of you were doing a research project, it's available, it's de-identified, so there's no way that you'd know personal information, which is a good thing. And you can actually go back to that data and try to figure out, well, Stats Canada has a great report about median income in different cities all over Canada. I'm curious to know, is the education level of adults in a certain city or urban center responsible for reflecting a certain income level? And you might want to do the research a different way. That kind of study is called a secondary research project, where you've used primary data collected for one thing to actually do research for a second thing. So now we have some classroom activities. Okay, let's look at what we are all required to do. Imagine that you've been hired by Huntington University or Laurentian University admissions office. So you're the student body now to review their recruiting methods and materials. And you make the decision that the best approach would be to organize a focus group. I should have gotten rid of the. So what you do as students is you want to organize a focus group of students who are thinking of coming to University of College. So what I want you to do, each of you, this is an independent exercise. Define your focus group. So what we'll do is we'll have different students speak about how they would answer all of these different topics. So you will be volunteered. So that eliminates the process of feeling shy and not wanting to speak up. So take a few minutes, okay? Read each question. So what we'll do, this is a classroom exercise. We'll give you all about 15 minutes. There are 6 questions, 2 to 3 minutes of each. Define a focus group. How will you find and ultimately select the participants? So you should answer each section. What will be the composition of the group in terms of gender, age, student's hometown, and current high score? So this is an exercise that we've done before in class, so it's not unreasonable. You also have to determine which part of your study is going to be quantitative, which part will be qualitative, and you have to explain your rationale for that. What issue do you want to cover? What is your topic? What do you want to find out from your focus group? And then we're going to try to construct a research statement. And then you're going to have to list 5 relevant questions to have to do with the research topic that you're thinking about to ask during the focus group interview. So you're organizing this focus group, so you want to be able to ask them questions. How might your experiences as a university student influence the way you design and carry out the research, which means you'll have to bracket your personal biases to do this successfully, okay? Because depending on your experience, I'm going to get rid of all the red marks so you can actually see everything on the screen. So it is 10:15 now. We'll give you time until 10:30. If you have any questions in the interim to ask regarding this exercise, go ahead and ask me. But otherwise, I want you to start, with a pen and paper on your computer. Whatever works for you, go ahead and do it. And then we will ask students to participate. I don't want to say randomly. Maybe we'll go by last name or something. And maybe it'll be random. I don't know. But I'll decide in 15 minutes. Okay, I think we're at time. It's the painful 15 minutes are over. And well, hopefully not painful. Hopefully you did some exploration. And okay, so in terms of volunteers, I'm going to ask the students in class first to volunteer. I'm going to give them the microphone so that they can talk to the rest of the class and you can hear them. You don't have to put this on your ears if you don't feel comfortable. Just speak into the microphone so everyone can listen. And I'll just take notes for them as they're talking on the screen itself. So what we'll have Marianne do is define the focus group by talking about how she's going to find and ultimately select the participants.
So I chose for my focus group current students, applicants, so high school and mature students. Why current students chose LU, why applicants chose to apply at LU, materials used to persuade future and current students, and I will ensure diversity of hometowns of uh, two or over 2 hours away from Sudbury and close by as well, because I just think there's a because I'll come over here.
Thank you. Sorry, class, if you can hear me. Marianne has a list. I'm just going at the list, which is very nice. So she's been thinking about it. Current students, applicants, both high school and mature. So she's defining a broad group, and which is absolutely fine. Both younger and older. So the question is, how will you find, how will you select is what you've answered. So you put the criteria down. How will you find the participants? Do you have that someplace?
I don't think so.
Okay, and that's fine. So she said how she'd select the participants. I'm going to offer Jessie the opportunity to tell me how she's going to find the participants. Jessie, all yours. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We're just making it a class exercise. Everybody has to participate. Nobody goes scot-free. You can use the continuation. Just A. So class, Jessie has a microphone. So if I'm fading or my voice is faded out, it's because I don't have the microphone with me. So we're asking Jessie, because Marianne answered how she'd select the participants, the criteria, the composition in terms of age, she specified that, but we can let somebody else also fill in on that section. But I want to know how you're going to find the participants, because it's one thing to design the criteria. So I'm going to have Jessie jump in and tell us how she thinks she's going to find the participants. Take the best guess. Nobody's
Okay. To find participants, it would be voluntary. You wouldn't want to force anyone into a participation or into a study that they weren't comfortable with answering. As Marianne said, her study group or study focus being to like fresh into university, and them saying why they chose Laurentian. So it'd be a voluntary, possibly interview type study of personal questions.
How do you find them?
You advertise, you
Thank you.
Facebook posts, Twitter posts, put up flyers, just anything to get word out.
Social media to get the word out that you want to create a focus group.
Focus group.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Jessica. Okay. Jessie, sorry, not Jessie. Okay, so how would you select the participants? How would you find? That's been answered. Composition has been answered in terms of age. What about students' hometown? Well, does who I'm going to ask next is, sorry, does anyone want to volunteer? Then you don't get asked after.
I would divide it up between like I would
hometown.
Oh, sorry.
Charlotte started, so I'm going to have to give it to Charlotte. Charlotte, go
Okay.
ahead.
I would just say for hometown, like, because Laurentian is in Sudbury, and to narrow it down, you would pick like a specific, like, I'm bad with like kilometers, but a particular radius around the school for
Right.
like which schools to. I'm not from Sudbury, so I don't know which like high schools are there, but
All right, so let's just list this down. So, so you're going to find and recruit the participants using social media. At least that's what one participant has suggested. The second thing is you're going to look at both young and mature students.
Why couldn't you just do it from the list of people who have applied to, say, the gerontology program and send them out a letter and say, you know, would you, or even put it on D2L if they're already
And that's an option.
in the,
That's
yeah.
absolutely an option. Yeah, so it's up to the researcher how you'd select the participant. So it's really, I mean, if Jessie was doing it, she would you know, do it a little differently. If Samantha, you would do it, you would go ahead and just send an email to all gerontology students. So it entirely depends on what you're trying to accomplish. So what's Aretha saying? Aretha has a comment. I'm just going to make sure we read the comment. Oh, this is two things. I seem to have lost sound. So, Aretha, if you go to the bottom of your screen, there should be a little little pop-up which has the symbol of a microphone. Do you see it? Do you see a microphone logo on your screen anywhere?
Hello?
Hi, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. And also make sure if you're using wireless headphones, make sure they're charged, because sometimes what happens is they just die out and then you can't hear or say anything. Okay, so going back to the example, social media for recruitment, younger and mature students. Sudbury was what was said by Charlotte. The alternative would be just email all gerontology students, right? That's an option in terms of recruitment. What else? Current high school, is that something we've considered yet? Are we going to pick a high school? Or are we just going to ask incoming students irrespective of high school? Any opinions on that?
Oh, anyone can answer?
So I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try highlighting this. We're talking about the composition of the people for the focus group. So there were no comments made on the high school that these students will be chosen from. What do you folks think? Should we pick one high school, or should we just poll all incoming students?
Why don't you make a differentiation between high school and mature students?
Well, we would have to have some demographic information. We'd have to ask them, are you a mature student, or are you a high school student, and so on. That's how we'd have to do it.
How about if we targeted senior high schools in the area? Particularly those coming in like next year or the year after.
Okay, so if and again, there's no right answer. You're creating a focus group. So Aretha says, let's target high schools and campaign strictly with high schools. And again, you have options. Okay, so you can go to multiple high schools. May not be one, or you might decide that we're just going to look at students from one high school. Okay, so many ways to define your group, but you understand that you have to define it so that you can recruit. Now, we're going to have somebody else start to address the next part. We haven't heard anything from, well, Aretha, perhaps you can get us started. So let's go with part 2. Which part of your focus group study is going to be quantitative? Are you going to have a quantitative component, and what is it going to look like?
Yeah, my
quantitative portion would be the number of participants, the amount of times whatever my recruiting process is, the amount of attempts, the amount of people in general that I extend to. I would do it by age, gender, and educational attainment, and I would need statistics for each area, I think.
So Aretha, so perhaps we should explain this. I should explain this a little better. So the quantitative component of your study, not of your recruitment. Your recruitment is your sample.
Oh.
What is the quantitative component of your study? Are you going to ask them questions which will make them reflect their answer in numbers?
Oh.
That's what that means. Which part of your study will be quantitative? It doesn't include the sampling process, which you identify by gender, by age. So this is strictly asking, when you have these people sitting around a table, I don't know how many you pick 15, you pick 6, you pick 20.
Mm-hmm.
What question are you going to ask them that's going to have them spit out a number? Or it doesn't have to be a specific question, but what kinds of questions do you think you would ask them? Or will there be such questions at all? Is that even relevant to what you're going to ask them?
Well, probably ask the number of persons interested in pursuing
excellent
secondary education.
Number of students.
Can I answer?
Yes, please.
Okay. I would also do a scaling, so how they felt before, like maybe a presentation about the school, and then after, their opinion.
So you would do some kind of a test before and after?
Yes, like a scaling, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you
Oh,
feel
okay.
about
So
the
you'd have a Likert scale, you'd have them respond to a scale. So
yes.
collect some data.
For the quantitative part, I would ask a question like, what influenced your decision to apply? Was it web? Was it somebody coming to the school? Was it, provide them with those options, and then of course another. But that's something, and then you can count those, and you can say if you have a study of 100 applicants, were they influenced to apply because of X, or
I understand where you're going with this. At first, I heard your example and I'm thinking, she's suggesting a qualitative example. But then when you explain that you do it for 100 people and see how many people were influenced by their parents, how many were influenced by a presentation, how many were influenced by their peers, then it's a quantitative study at that point. So yes, absolutely. Okay, so you can have parts of the study be quantitative, correct? That's excellent, excellent, great responses. If anybody has a burning example to add, I'm not going to stop you, so this would be the time, but if you don't, we will move on to the qualitative section.
So for the qualitative, I know when I was in high school, we had people come to the school, and then after we finished like their presentation, they would send an email that you had an option to participate in, and then you got a chance to win something. And I know like the qualitative part that they had used was to ask like what information that we had received that was helpful. But also if there was other information, like things we were interested in that hadn't been covered, that they want to see what people were interested in that hadn't been talked about.
So if you have, I understand what you're saying, but I want you to frame it like, for example, you have 6 students around a table and you're the moderator, okay? What is your qualitative question going to look like?
I would ask what motivates them to want to pursue what their motivation is or what their aspiration is.
Okay, what their motivation is, but I also want Madison to continue because she had that example. I just want her to frame it in the context of the group.
Sorry.
No problem, Aretha. Thank you for that. It is on the list. So the motivation is absolutely important.
Would you be able to repeat what you just said? It just froze. I didn't hear it.
Oh, I'm sorry. You had just suggested as to what happened with your high school recruitment phenomena. What I want you to be able to do is just frame it as a question for a group that you want input from.
Okay, so does information provided was the information that was provided help you understand what is offered? What other information would you like to know about?
Okay, so you're going to ask them to speak about information offered. Okay. Okay.
What I would ask is, what do they look for in a school and its benefits, and whether what was presented to them reaches those benefits and like.
Okay, so does the presentation address stuff that you think is relevant, right?
Yes.
Okay. Presentation address your needs, concerns, or okay. And it's you don't really have to explain the reason for this particular question, because it's quite self-explanatory. You're trying to get them talk about their rationale. Anything else? What part? Because you have a focus group, you have a bunch of 6 people. You can have more than one question. You don't have to have simply one question regarding just the presentation.
Have we covered why do you want to come to Laurentian?
Why LU? And would that be an open question that people would chime in and talk about, and then you'd uncover a lot of different topics? Is that what you're thinking, Samantha?
I'm thinking yes. So it would be qualitative because it would be looking for certain themes.
Correct. And you would kind of identify the predominant themes just on the basis of discussion, and you'll find some theme is very popular with everybody. Maybe there might be a number 2, a number 3, a number 4. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay, yep, and that makes complete sense. Okay, so that's excellent, and the rationale is quite evident, right? Because what is your objective? Your objective is to improve recruitment methods and materials, right? That's why you're on the committee. If Laurentian was having so many students that it couldn't handle, it wouldn't set out a focus group for you to go and identify, well, what's wrong, what's going on with our recruitment methods and materials? Because if you are getting students hand over fist, you probably don't want to worry about whatever it is you're doing. You're doing it all right. And if you have a focus group, it's to improve things. You might still have a focus group to improve quality, but then the objective is completely different. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, I lost my train of thought, which happens to me once in a while. Okay, so now I'm going to request somebody else to jump in who hasn't spoken just yet. Madison has sent a message. Is it freezing for everyone or just your computer? Folks, can you please respond to Madison? Let her know whether you're having computer issues as well.
No problem.
Yeah, mine is okay.
Okay, it's freezing for Claire as well. Hang in there. If your computer is freezing, the connection at Laurentian is very strong. So it's not from this side, we know that. Everything is being recorded. So if you miss sections, just go back, rewind, and replay. That's the best thing I can suggest. Alternatively, moving forward, what you can do is you can just test your internet speeds. There are many websites that let you test your internet speed at home. If your speed is on the lowish side, perhaps you're too far away from your wireless modem, or maybe you just need to plug it using a cable, your laptop, and that should fix your problems. Okay? All right, so let's pick on somebody. Well, when I say pick on it, I mean it in a kind and gentle way, and in encouraging class participation. Claire, I know your computer is a little sticky now, but we will have you try. If it doesn't come through, it doesn't come through. We'll have, what issue, I want you to address what issue you want to cover. And if you find that the speaking is choppy or interrupted, you can enter your response in the chat window and I'll open it up to everybody. What issue do you want to cover as the moderator of the focus group?
I was a little bit confused by this one because of the issue. So I didn't know if you were looking for a problem or because I wrote like, what is appealing to you to attend Laurentian, or why would you like to attend Laurentian?
And no, I hadn't specified the concern, but that's why it asked what issue do you want to cover. So it would be of interest for you to understand why would the student attend Laurentian in the first place. So you're making the assumption that the student has already picked Laurentian, and that's fine. You might be working with a bunch of students. You could probably frame your question, why would students attend or not attend? Let me add the not attend too. Capital L for Laurentian. Does anybody else want to talk about what the topic would be for the focus group? So, sorry, go ahead, please.
I would look at areas like, do they find cultural awareness, sexual identity, accommodation for mature adults or adults onto second careers. I would have those represented in the group and ask them if they feel that the policies and process is accommodating to them.
Cultural sensitivity, accommodation. Accommodation can be of different types, right? There's cultural accommodation, there's accommodation for varied learning styles. I can't spell today, but bear with me. It'll eventually come. So yes, I mean, as a moderator, you have preset questions. You might want to address the issue, why a student would attend, why would you attend or not attend Laurentian, and the students in your focus group to start to talk about why they would attend. Maybe they can stay at home. Maybe they, they live on campus. Maybe a family member or a parent works at Laurentian, so they get free tuition. Maybe it's they want to get away from where they live, and so they want to come and attend Laurentian. So finally, they don't have to report to mom and dad back, right? I mean, I just talking about different situations, right? What is the topic? The topic could be anything. Sorry, did anyone have a comment? I feel like I'm talking over people.
Can you explain the difference between an issue and a topic?
Oh, an issue is a broader spread. For example, let's say the issue is admission interest. And the topic can be more defined, admission interest. Based on, sorry, you can't probably read that, based on geography, financial support. It could be one or many. Now, this is my very simplistic explanation of the difference between the issue and the topic. The issue is a broader issue. The issue is admissions, okay, admission interest. What causes admission interest? What causes students to come in? And the topic might be, you might focus it down because you can't talk about everything. Perhaps the focus group is willing to meet only for 15 minutes. So perhaps you want to be very specific. Remember, a good research question is a very limited question. So perhaps you can't talk about everything under the sun, and your topic becomes, we will look at financial support offered by Laurentian University in terms of influencing admission options. Okay, so you may have an introductory comment, but then you have students talk about how it feels to be supported, if that's a qualitative study, and how it feels to have no minimal financial obligations at the end of it, because whatever the situation, perhaps Laurentian offers a lot of bursaries for you to be supported and so on. So that's probably as clearly as I understand it. Does anyone else want to jump in and elaborate further the difference between issue and topic? Because I don't know if I'm being clear enough.
I think it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Is the is the issue what we're asking them, or is the issue how do we improve recruitment at Laurentian?
Oh, we don't know that there's an issue, and sorry, I just have the chat window open. I'm just going to address that in 1 second, Samantha. I don't think
Okay.
Charlotte says, I don't think my microphone is working well. For C, okay, so she has made her comment. So I'm going to share the comment momentarily, so we'll go and address that. So I think you all might be able to see Charlotte's comment.
Does her microphone have, like mine has this, you can mute it, you can turn it up. Right. Mine was squeezed by accident.
Oh, I see.
So she has that. Maybe she could check.
Yeah, Charlotte, I think your microphone isn't working, but you probably heard Aretha's response. Just check it out, and if it doesn't work, don't lose sleep over it. You've provided your response for C. She would want to establish what the strongest driving factors are for students when choosing a university. That way, Laurentian University could market in a way that appeals to the needs of future students. 100%, and that's the whole idea of this exercise. So the issue is she wants to cover recruitment. And so, sorry, I know I interrupted what Samantha was saying earlier. Samantha, could you restate what you're saying, because I kind of lost my train of thought.
Yeah, I was wondering if the issue is the questions that we're asking them, or is it how do we improve recruitment at Laurentian?
And it would be the researcher's choice. So we are working with a make-believe situation. We haven't assumed one thing or the other. So if you are if your issues are the quality of recruiting material, hypothetically, let's say enrollment has been strong, but somebody does a review of all the materials, recruiting materials, and they look at it and say, man, this is awful. This is horrible. It's just that the demand is so high that it doesn't even matter what you're using. Students are breaking through doors and coming in. You need to fix this. That could be one situation. Second situation could be you have your recruitment methods and materials, and your enrollment continues to drop. And then you have someone come in and take a look at the material. So the issue is, do we improve the quality of the material because the baseline quality is not standardized or not good enough, or do we improve recruitment material because it's not reaching the target audience? And that's an issue that has to be determined ahead by the focus group organizer, figuring out what they actually wanted to do. Okay? Okay, so now let's see who we can request to volunteer the research statement. I'm going to look for people who haven't said anything.
I haven't said anything, but I kind of got mixed up with the whole beginning part of it, and I chose a different way to look at it. And mine was about high school students using the website to look for information about the school before going to it or before applying to it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily directly deal with exactly what everybody else has been talking about, but my research statement was that high school students aged 17 to 19 in Sudbury prefer to use the website to access information about Laurentian University.
Yours is actually very focused. There's not, I don't think there's an issue because you're saying, you're talking about the role of the website in your research statement. So your research statement has to ask a question. So what was your question? Could you just restate that for me, please?
Oh, the question. Okay, so.
Or your statement. Well, the statement typically tends to be of an inquiry type because you're trying to find something out.
Okay. Okay. Why do high school students aged 17 to 19 in Sudbury prefer to use the website, that Laurentian University's website, to access information about the university?
That's perfect. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that question. It's very focused. You have defined geographic location. You have defined the age group. Well, by age group, you have defined the grade, which would eventually define the age group itself. Why did they use the website to influence their admissions or recruitment decisions, right? Something to that effect?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great research statement. There can be many different types of questions depending on what you wish to ask. There are 13 students in the class. I'm sure we can probably get many alternate statements too, and all of which are correct because you're the researcher and you're trying to ask the question. Does anybody else want to jump in with a different question? Courtney, have you heard from you? Would you mind? Do you want to jump in with a research question? We can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I'm going to turn you all the way up, but I'm not sure we can hear you still. Oh. Okay, whatever you're doing, stop. I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm not sure how that happened. Let's try this again. Courtney, if I'm not sure this is working from your sound perspective, you can type something in the chat window. I can't seem to hear you at all.
How about this question?
Oh. How are other people able to move my slides? That shouldn't be happening. It's like we have a ghost in the system. We can't have that. Okay, not sure why. Sorry, Aretha, you can carry on while we wait for Courtney to type in her response.
Okay, I have kind of two. Like, how is Laurentian University's recruiting methods and materials meeting the need?
Oh, beautiful. Great question. How are LU's current materials and methods meeting? Okay.
Yes, the needs of.
That's one question. And you said you had a second one for me.
It was pretty much it, kind of turned around, like.
Okay.
Does it meet the needs? Pretty much.
Okay.
Turn that question around.
Okay, but how about asking the question, how are Laurentian's current materials and methods meeting your expectations of what you expect in a university? Because you have a bunch of students, right, in that room?
Yes.
So they've gone through the materials and methods.
Yes.
How is what's being advertised to you influencing your decision to join or not join Laurentian, right? That would be an interesting question to ask the focus group.
Yes, it would. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, you're all on the right track, which is what I really like. That's great. We don't have any more. Yeah, well, we have a couple more questions and we only have a few minutes. I'm going to unfortunately move forward. Okay. Now let's see. Someone who hasn't answered yet or has only answered limited responses. It says 5 relevant questions to do with the research topic that you think are important to ask during the focus group interview. So we'll have 5 people give 5 questions. So we don't have one person giving all 5 questions. Who wants to go first?
I will.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, so I would ask the focus group, why did you choose to use the website to find out information about Laurentian University rather than calling or going in person?
Why the website? Okay, instead of other options. Okay, thank you very much. Who's going next?
I would ask them, what are the determining factors in choosing between your top 3 universities?
Great questions. You should be on recruitment panels, all of you. Okay, next.
Maybe you want to move to a city with actual snow, because in Southern Ontario there's like no snow. I was there for Christmas and there's like no snow. And I don't know, maybe you like going snowshoeing all the time. Maybe there's activities where
Choice. Okay, so Marianne has a different take, and I like it very much. So she's suggesting the role of snow and snow-based activities in determining the university of your choice. So let's ask the question, what is the role of availability sorry, it's awful chicken scratch, and it's my handwriting is actually better, but on the iPad it's terrible. Availability of choice of outdoor recreation. I'm just going to make it more general. She was very specific about snow, which is fine. I moved to Canada for the snow, I'll tell you, I'll be honest.
Really?
Oh, 100%.
I love to be inside and look at the snow outside. I enjoyed seeing it on TV. But when I came and started living, I had to walk in it. I had to move about and had to go to work, especially in the early mornings.
Well, it's interesting. In India, everybody likes the idea of snow because they've never experienced it.
Exactly.
I'm a very typical Indian man. I also loved the idea of snow, and then I was in Vermont and then in Canada, very, very snowy places. And I still don't mind it. I just don't like shoveling it.
I remember you Skyped into school 3 years ago, and you were showing us the background where there was so much snow, and I thought to myself, oh my God, that's really north.
So funny. I'm just going to read comments from Courtney. Courtney says, why did you as incoming students choose Laurentian at all? Why choose Laurentian? And I think she has a second question, and we'll put that up as well. The second question is, does flexibility of classes offered promote you to choose LU? Class flexibility, is that a big factor?
Yes, it is.
Well, true, but that's a question that she has for, and I'm happy to know that. Thank you for answering that, and we're trying our best to continue to do exercises of this sort where everyone can participate regardless of whether you're in town, whether you're, outside, different country, doesn't matter. So I think we have about 5 questions now. So one question, I think it was from Connie, who suggested, well, talk to us about why you use the website. And I think Samantha said, what are the determining factors for picking the top 3 universities of your choice? Marianne said, how does the availability and choice of outdoor activities influence your choice of university? I think Courtney was, why choose Laurentian at all? And she offered a second one, why does class flexibility have a role in the choice of your university? Okay, so I mean, you all have the idea, but if you want to add more, if you already have a response that you think should make it to the list, tell me. I don't want to exclude anybody.
I was thinking, is your program offered at other schools other than the Laurentian? Just because obviously if you're interested in a program not offered anywhere else, the other schools, what they offer might not be as important to you.
So could you state that as a question for me, please? I'm sorry, I didn't catch all of it.
The program that you're enrolled in, is it offered at other universities?
Okay, so so how do we make that a nice question that people would discuss about?
I don't know how to phrase it as a question, but I do know that gerontology is not quite widely offered. And if it's offered at colleges, at least here, it's like maybe a module. Like I think Seneca has this social service worker, but they only have like one module of gerontology.
Right,
so
right. It's not an
full
entire
course, exactly, the specialization and so on, it's not very widespread.
Right, right.
I'm not sure how to frame the question.
Right. Can you speak to the availability of your program in other universities? And whether that was an influencing factor in you picking Laurentian or you considering Laurentian. And so, you know, we have more than 5 questions. As you can imagine, you can probably have 12, 13, 14, 15 questions, depending on how much you wanted answered to improve the materials. The trick always, and we'll look at this moving forward, whenever you have an interview or a focus group, the idea is to not make it painful for the participants, because you can only do it once. After that, they'll never come again to participate in a group that you organize. The key is to have it relevant, and you know, you might need to ask 5 questions, and sometimes you might need 20 questions, just because that's what those are the kinds of answers that you need. But in general, people tend to limit the number of items, as they call it. Number F, or letter F, how might your own experiences as a university student influence the way you design and carry out your research? What will you have to bracket? And we spoke about the concept of bracketing before, where if you've gone through something, you're likely to let that unfortunately influence the way you design your research. So can you think of ways that your experiences as a student, so most of you are either in your 3rd or your 4th years taking this course, how have your own experiences, how would they influence the way you design and carry out your research? What are things that you might be likely to miss because you're thinking from just your perspective? What are the things that you might over ask just because you know too much about your own admission process? What do you think?
For me, I would need to bracket the fact that I prefer going in person. Just like having this class, I prefer seeing people, hearing people.
Okay.
So with the webs, like to find information, I would rather, you know, I am a mature student, so going to Sudbury, which is almost 8 hours away, is not reasonable, but I prefer talking to somebody on the phone.
Right. So there is a bias towards life course. Can I state that? It's you know, it is
Yes.
a preference. I would argue that's a bias. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Other biases, other personal stuff that might influence you conducting the research?
So for me, I came into the program from the George Brown activation.
Right.
And I got a lot of courses transferred over. So I got credits like before coming in. So I think that would be a big bracket for me, is maybe other universities, like I know McMaster offers gerontology, maybe they offer almost as amount or just as much. But because George Brown and Laurentian had the agreement, I automatically just went through to Laurentian.
So what would your, would that be a bias? Would that be your, what would that influence, Claire?
maybe if, like, I don't know how to word it. Maybe if there's like another student,
Right.
like who maybe is interested in gerontology and maybe applied to George Brown kind of thing. I'm not too sure how to.
Okay, so your own experience as a student have been that you received a lot of credit from George Brown coming into the gerontology program because of the arrangement between the two institutions, correct?
Yeah.
So what would it affect? Yes, there's a.
Would it make us biased towards our giving Laurentian in our minds preferential treatment because it has this collaborative
100%.
relationship?
So the bias that Aretha, you've articulated really well, and that Claire suggested, it's an obvious choice bias, right? For lack of a better word, because no other university gives you the 16, I can't remember, 40 credits or
42 credits, I think.
42 credits. So it's a massive advantage, right? You're going into an undergraduate program with 42 credits that you don't have to worry about paying for again. So there's an obvious choice bias that's involved. Okay, good. So we have two biases that are there because, you know, as a moderator for a focus group, you come in from George Brown and you're thinking, well, I assume everybody will say, I want to go to Laurentian because that's the obvious thing to do, right? So you have this bias that you're carrying with you. And thank you for identifying and pointing that out, Claire. And Aretha, thank you for elaborating on that. Other biases that we might have, which might influence how we design the questions and experiments.
What if I'm a younger person on the panel? I'm a younger recruiter. What if my bias is to younger, similar to myself, and some of the persons in the classroom these days are older adults?
So you're saying there could be, well, you have to talk about yourself. So if you can't make assumptions for.
Okay. I was just creating that scenario.
Because there is a reality that there might be some younger people who are ageist. There might be some older people that are ageist.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I want you to think about yourself and what might be a bias for you.
Okay.
For me, when I applied to Laurentian, I'm an Ontario resident, and this is a lot of the course or the program is available online. So it was quite a shock to me to discover that people from other countries are taking this program.
Aha. Okay, so there's a bias perhaps thinking that it's just a domestic program. It's actually, it is more domestic than international, but we have several students from different places. And then, of course, you have to set that aside when you ask your questions, right? Okay, great. Okay, you know what? It's great contributions, very nice. I really like how this exercise turned out. All of you are thinking, and that's what I want of this class. We are at time, or about 2 minutes off. I'm here for a few more minutes, but I will let the students in the class leave. And if you have anything important, please feel free. You're not obliged to stay after this point. I'm here for a few more minutes. If you have questions, concerns, issues that you want to address at this point with the course content itself. But other than that, I'm not offended if you have to leave.
Is this something similar to what we're going to see on the midterm?
Oh, you're talking about the problem itself?
Yeah.
The problem will come from your question bank questions. We might put in one of these questions discussed in class, and it may not be worded exactly the same because, you know, then you have all the answers ahead of time. I want you to think in a sense. So there will be there might be one or two thought-provoking questions. Obviously, if you do all the practice questions and you read all your chapters, it should be a non-issue.
Okay.
Okay, Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Aretha. Have a good weekend.
Same to you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Connie. Thank you very much. See you on Monday.